I didn't ever try to commit fraud on anyone. I'm deeply sorry about what happened. I had a duty to all of our stakeholders, to our customer, employees, to our investors, to make sure the right things happened at the company. And clearly I didn't do a good job of that. I made a lot of mistakes or things I would give anything to be able to do over again.
On behalf of everybody here and on behalf of the public, I want to thank you for engaging in it at a time in truth when I know you've been advised not to. So thank you so very, very much. Thank you. Sam Bankman-Fried, everybody.
We saw today he was speaking at the New York Times Summit where it was very much, it wasn't a very serious situation at all. We could see, you know, he lied, he made some jokes, he received a round of applause afterwards. And also, you just have to look at the people that are involved with FTX. I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried was one of the second largest donors to Biden's, to President Biden's campaign. He had the likes of Bill Clinton and Tony Blair speaking at his conference down in the Bahamas. So I'm not feeling very confident that he will see the true weight of the law. Even the New York Times are creating all these puff pieces about him. Forbes were glorifying him. It's very bizarre, and unfortunately, I don't think he's going to see real justice.
I was watching through hours of footage of reactions from other people to SBF and the FTX collapse, and one critical question kept arising. Who is involved in FTX? Or rather, who is protecting him, okay? Who is with him? Who's in cahoots with him? And as a quick one-sentence summary, SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, former leader of FTX, is accused of fraud, stealing people's money, hacks. I mean, the list goes on and on. But either way, there's a lot of illegal things that seem to be happening here. A lot of ways where money was mishandled, a lot of lying, and he's out there in the Bahamas running around like a little Bahama mama, speaking at Twitter spaces and keynotes and summits. And I'm like, why isn't he in custody? Why isn't he in prison? And who's protecting him? What authority has put a bubble around SBF here? I mean, he could totally run a fraud or a scheme that steals billions of dollars from millions of people, but if I don't report $600 to the government, they're gonna come and find me and take me to jail. But SBF gets to prance around in his penthouse suite. So I had to know how he's being protected and by whom. Who is protecting SBF? And I think this clip from Joe Rogan kind of starts at this.
I think that company FTX was the second biggest donor to the Democrat Party.
Alameda
the
Research.
The first biggest company was is Alameda Research the sister company that they funneled the $10 billion to?
That's what, yeah.
So that's the company they funneled the $10 billion to. They were the second biggest, next to George Soros, who's number one. They're the second biggest donor to the Democrat Party.
That's dirty ball.
That's something. I mean, maybe you're like a hardcore lefty and you really want the Democrats to win, and this is your way of going about it.
Well, if this is true, then it warrants a critique at the very least.
This is going around. I would just say that I don't know the truth of all of this, but this has been like people are using this as information that is fact online.
So what is this saying here?
Sam, who's the guy that was running this FTX,
his mom,
platform,
right?
His mother is a huge Democratic fundraiser. She runs something called, or a co-founder of Mind the Gap and the Get Out the Vote organization.
Mm-hmm. Including the Center for Voter Information, launches the FTX crypto exchange.
This is a timeline here. April 5th. This says Joe Biden announces his presidential campaign, and 13 days later he starts FTX, and then gets a bunch of money that no one really can explain.
Whoa!
And then starts giving it to they start spending it on campaigns and backing people and doing all sorts of things.
So through FTX, somehow or another, the allegation is that it's funding the Democratic Party.
Right, and then that's why I haven't read through that whole article of like they said that this money then went to Ukraine in some way and then has now through some backdoor channels been put back into some people's hands, and that's where it's getting lost in an exchange. And
oh, Jesus. Well, this is what we're talking about on the phone over here, Mr. Pappas. It's like this is what people always do when they can. When people can, especially something like crypto and tokens, you're in the fog already.
Okay, so he is indeed the number 2 donor to the Democrat Party. And armed with this information, I headed to the streets of the internet. Twitter. And I saw this particular Democrat being very friendly and warm to SBF. Maxine Waters, a congresswoman from California. She says this in a tweet to SBF. We appreciate that you've been candid in your discussions about what happened at FTX. Your willingness to talk to the public will help the company's customers, investors, and others. To that end, we would welcome your participation in our hearing on the 13th. That's very kind of her. This is very very low. It's not like we're angry, you need to answer. It's like, we appreciate you. You've been so candid. We invite you to come and talk to the people you scammed and frauded. It seems to be very charitable to him, and maybe because they seem a little close. I mean, look at these pictures. Look at that. They're like best friends. And this is of her blowing a kiss to him. I mean, that's a little funny. Like, the only person I blow kisses to is my 3-year-old daughter. But maybe SBF is like a daughter to Maxine Waters, a very short, soft, curly-headed, bunny-hugging vegan daughter. But it doesn't only seem like government officials, but it also seems like the media. There seems to be a lot of coverage by the media, where the media is sort of giving their platform to SBF to kind of make his case and address the public.
The mainstream media is giving this person a platform to further manipulate the public into thinking the perpetrator is the victim. Frankly, this is a distraction from what the justice system as well as Congress needs to do to investigate the facts about what happened. We do need to enforce the laws against those who break them.
It just seems like there's no enforcement of laws over FTX. Maybe because SBF has a lot of strong political ties to one side of the aisle, which is the Democrat elite. And in this clip, Chamath Palihapitiya kind of lines out his background and how that all gets involved and intertwined with this whole FTX debacle.
Now you look at SBF, it's the exact opposite. He went to the perfect elite private high school. Then he went to one of the most prestigious elite private universities.
MIT.
His parents teach governance, of all things, at one of the most elite liberal institutions in America.
Stanford.
They are in the establishment of the progressive left. And what happened was he took customer funds and all of this money. He made tens of millions of dollars of political donations. He wrapped himself in this blanket of a progressive left-leaning cause called effective altruism. And all of the mainstream media fell for it and embraced him, as well as some politicians, because it met everything that they themselves also bought into.
Yes.
And now you have this cataclysmic event, a multi-deca-billion-dollar fraud or bankruptcy, millions of customer accounts who are frozen, tens of millions to hundreds of millions to billions of dollars lost and stolen from them. And they refuse to re-underwrite this kid. And the reason is because in order to do so, it's like eating your own tail. And that's why they don't want to do it. And so this is why you have the media basically allowing him to do an apology tour. Now, this is his second time at manipulating them. The first time he was able to manipulate them by basically being one of them. And now he's allowing them and their desire to basically protect themselves so that he can create some kind of a defense for himself. And I just think the whole thing is gross because it misses the entire mood of the nation. This is an enormous financial fraud that was perpetrated on tens of millions of people. And there's no accountability because in order to do so, the media would effectively have to admit that they missed it and they got it wrong, and they refuse to do it. And I think that is the really big problem that nobody is really speaking out about, is like, well, if these folks are meant to be the last stop to make sure that there's truth and honesty and transparency in society, and you can't count on them, and in fact, they're just going to reflect their own narrative, what is one supposed to do to learn the truth?
So I think he lined it out beautifully and simply. It's very clear he's on the left side of the aisle. Those are the bad guys. Or are they? Because recently SBF has been recorded stating that he's been donating funds to not only the Democrat Party, but the Republican Party as well, and what we call dark funds, dark money.
I donated about the same amount to both parties this year. That was not generally known because despite Citizens United being literally the highest profile Supreme Court case of the decade and the thing everyone talks about when they talk about campaign finance, for some reason, in practice, no one can possibly fathom the idea that someone in practice actually gave dark. So, I don't know, all my Republican donations were dark.
No, this is not possible. The Republicans are the good guys. They're the ones fighting for freedom and, no. I rarely find that life is cut and dry, black and white like that. There are bad actors everywhere we go, every industry. You got good doctors and you got bad doctors. You got good teachers and bad teachers. You get good pastors and bad pastors, and you get good government servants and you get bad government servants. Unfortunately, I trust nobody in the government. I don't trust them all. And maybe I should, and maybe I should be a little more charitable because there are certainly some good ones in there, but there's just too much widespread corruption out there, and I just feel like they're all snakes in the grass. And then I came across this on Twitter, which is a list of all the Republicans who accepted money from FTX. I mean, if you just look at the list here, it's a who's who, right? It's Mitch McConnell, it's McCarthy, and then you've got down the line, it's Rodney Jackson and Greg Pence and John Carter and all these people. It's a long list, and I haven't verified this, but this is a list from the streets of Twitter. The reality is I don't know what's going on, and therefore I cannot trust anything that's going on. I just got my ear to the ground and my pulse to the streets of who is doing the research and the evidence behind SBF. And I found that there's no one else in the world, or rather at least on the internet, who's looking to take down SBF than BitBoy Crypto.
Sam, where are you? Come tell your story. Let's talk. I'll come up there.
I mean, BitBoy documented himself flying to the Bahamas, looking for him in his car and his house. And in this clip, he's talking on Twitter Spaces, talking about all the research, all the sources that he has, all the evidence that he's loading up on SBF.
This was a system that was set up that was not supposed to be blown up overnight. The reason why this is such a big story is because we were working with NBC News. CoinDesk puts out an article, and also you had CZ. Those three things, because basically once CZ put out the article, we were able to work with our NBC reporter to put out what a lot of the evidence that we already had exposing this. All three of these things together blew this thing up. The politicians, the Ukrainian aid, that we haven't even gotten into that whole aspect of this. None of that was supposed to be uncovered overnight. And it all got uncovered overnight, and all of these politicians have so much egg on their face, they don't know what to do. We're just still trying to figure out the relationship between FTX, Republicans, Democrats, and who is on whose side. We just got the news about Kevin McCarthy coming out last week. We thought he was probably in the clear on the Republican side. He was paid by FTX to stop Republicans from winning his own party. So this is so much more complicated than just a Democrat versus Republican issue. And everybody wants to portray it like, oh, the Democrats got all the money, and certainly Joe Biden was the biggest donor. Sam was the number 2 donor to Joe Biden, obviously, SBF was. But the fact is, it's much more corrupt and widespread than that. You do not see a scandal of corruption of this proportion just come out on accident, or excuse me, you only see this kind of thing come out on accident. So Sam, where the regulation was coming in, Sam was meeting with Gary Gensler for 6 months. That was the Trojan horse.
Seems pretty obvious to me that he was playing both sides of the aisle. Play them against each other and let them fight. Give money to both sides, and it doesn't matter who wins the elections, you walk away with protection. I have at least one more clip to play at the end of this video, and it's Layla Heilpern, and she outlines what we should be doing in reaction to all this and what the future of the crypto industry will be. But before we get to that, I'd love to hear your reactions on who is on FTX's side in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next video.
This is going to set the industry back years. People have lost a lot of confidence in cryptocurrency simply because of what has happened. But I would say do not worry, mainly because this isn't an issue about cryptocurrency. This is an issue of human corruption, human error, and human greed. That's simply all it is. That's why these conversations are so important, because we have to give education and actually teach people we do not want them leaving their cryptocurrency on these centralized exchanges, particularly exchanges that have been working so closely with the SEC for the last 6 months, and somehow the SEC had no idea that this company were insolvent. That's another story. So we want to teach these people that actually they can buy their crypto on these centralized platforms, but then remove it and take self-custody, put it in a non-custodial wallet where only you hold the keys. And no matter what happens, it doesn't matter what happens to a company if it goes insolvent, you don't have to trust a centralized entity. All you do is you trust the blockchain, and that's the best thing to do.